The spring stated meeting of the Presbytery of West Virginia will be held on Saturday, May 20th at First Presbyterian Church in Clarksburg. This will be the first hybrid meeting of the Presbytery, as minister members and ruling elders who have registered to do so will be able to participate by Zoom. The hope is this will go smoothly. However, because it's something new, we see it as an experiment, which means that we will need a quorum of ministers and ruling elders present in person in case something happens with Zoom. At this point in time, registrations indicate that will occur. The hope is that those on Zoom and in person will be patient as we try something new. I'm Susan Sharp Campbell, Associate for Educational Ministry for the Presbytery, and in this video I will be walking through the docket and providing an overview of the work we will be about on May 20th. Please note that this video is not meant to take the place of a careful reading through the entire advance packet, which, in addition to recommendations to be considered on the 20th, contains a great deal of information about the ongoing work of the leadership team, Presbytery committees, as well as several staff members. As you read through the packet, I encourage you not to decide how you're going to vote based on what's on the typed page. As we gather in councils of the church, including this Presbytery meeting, we do so trusting that God's Spirit will be present in our midst, guiding us in discerning God's way for us as we hear reports and make decisions together. So come informed, but open to the movement of the Spirit speaking in the gathered community. On the 20th, plan to arrive at the church between 9 and 10 a.m., so you'll have time to check in, pick up your name tag, and pay for lunch if you haven't already done so. This will also be a time to enjoy refreshments provided by Bridgeport Presbyterian Church and join in fellowship with fellow commissioners. If you're joining by Zoom, plan to log on between 9:30 and 10 a.m., and please be sure that your name shows on your screen so those taking attendance can note your presence. Those registered for Zoom will receive the login information on Thursday, May 18th. At this point, I would encourage you to pause the video and download the advance packet if you haven't done so already. It can be found at www.wvpresbytery.org or in an email sent on May 10th. I think you will find the video more helpful if you can follow along as I go through the advance packet. You'll notice it contains a considerable number of pages. If you'll be in person for the meeting, you will need to download it to a device you will have with you for the meeting. If you need a printed copy, they will be available, but only if you call 304-744-7634 or email office@wvpresbytery.org no later than Wednesday, May 17th. If you're on Zoom, you may want to download the packet to a second device or plan to divide your screen so you can watch on Zoom as well as see the reports under consideration. Looking at the packet itself, you'll note that it is divided into 3 sections. The first is the docket with the agenda and reports, the second, the worship bulletin, and finally, flyers on upcoming events in the Presbytery. The docket, found on pages 1 and 2 of the advance packet, sets forth the order in which business will be considered. Items marked with an asterisk indicate orders of the day. These items will be taken up at the times noted, even if that means an item needs to be set aside and gone back to later in the meeting. The meeting will be called to order at 10 a.m. by moderator David Lee, pastor of Marlinton Presbyterian Church. The first items of business will be the seating of new corresponding members. These are ministers of Word and Sacrament who are members of other presbyteries, but who are attending this meeting. On the 20th, this will include Forrest Clausen, executive of the Synod of the Trinity, who's a member of Pittsburgh Presbytery. Ruling elders who are attending Presbytery for the first time as commissioners will then be recognized, including those attending by Zoom. At this point in the meeting, the presence of a quorum will be announced. A quorum for this meeting is 15% of ministers of word and sacrament, or 16, and 15% of our churches represented by a ruling elder, or 18. Once a quorum is noted, the docket for the day, found on pages 1 and 2 of the advance packet, will be approved, followed by the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, you'll find those items that those planning the meeting have identified as not likely to be discussed, so we will take up these items together. They include approval of excused absences, approval of the offering during this meeting being sent to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, and approval for Enslow Park Presbyterian Church to sell a piece of property. Please remember, however, that if there is any item on the consent agenda that a voting participant wants to discuss or hear more about, all one has to do is request that it be removed, and it will be returned to later in the day. Temporary clerks will then be appointed by the moderator. They will count any votes other than voice votes and pass out anything that needs to be distributed during the meeting. Those members of the leadership team who are present at the meeting will then be appointed to serve as the committee on bills and overtures for the meeting, taking up any new business and making a recommendation on it at the end of the meeting. Please note that any new business to be introduced must be given to the stated clerk in writing prior to the lunch break. At each presbytery meeting, there's time in the morning for an educational focus. For this meeting, Elizabeth Conley, Connections Coordinator for the Synod of the Trinity, will be sharing information on grants, including how to write grant requests and how to find grant sources. Following a time of announcements, we will then join together in a time of worship, during which we will be celebrating the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. Those on Zoom are encouraged to have some sort of bread and beverage available with you as we worship. You'll find the worship bulletin following page 63 in the advance packet. At the end of the bulletin, you'll find information on who will be leading worship and the resources that were used in the creation of this service. If you're joining by Zoom, you'll receive a copy of the bulletin with the words to hymns provided in the same email as the Zoom link. Also, those on Zoom who wish to contribute to the offering may do so by credit card by going to www.wvpresbytery.org and under the mailing information, clicking on Donate. To donate by check, you can send your check to the address listed there. Please put Presbytery Meeting Offering in the memo line. After worship, we will celebrate the upcoming retirement of Ed Thompson, our General Presbyter, before breaking for lunch. Following lunch, we'll reconvene with prayer and then hear the reports of Maureen Wright, our stated clerk. Her written report, which can be found on page 4, includes the likely already approved recommendation concerning excused absences. On the pages that follow, you will find the Presbytery Summary Statistical Report based on the information submitted on session statistical reports earlier in the year. In similar manner to session minutes being submitted for review by the presbytery, presbytery minutes must be submitted to the synod for review. Our 2022 records were approved without exception or delinquency. On page 6 of the advance packet, you will find the procedural matters that guide us as we meet together. In addition, the stated clerk will review the ways in which Zoom participants will be recognized at the meeting. Section A on page 6 lifts up principles of parliamentary law, which include courtesy to all, one item at a time, majority rule, respect the rights of the minority, justice for all, and partiality for none. All ways to show respect for one another as we seek to discern where God is leading us and make decisions. In general, how to work and play well with others as we gather in community. As items are discussed, pro and con speakers will alternate, with individuals being asked to identify their position. When one person has spoken on a pending question, all others wishing to speak will be heard before that person can speak a second time. It takes special permission for anyone to speak on the same question more than twice. Section B contains provisions from the Presbytery's manual that guide us, including who has the ability to speak, that is, voice, and who has the ability to speak and vote. Section C sets forth the procedural rules we follow. These include everyone speaking for whatever reason needs to go to a microphone, and when called on by the moderator, share their name, church, or relationship to the presbytery. If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, you will need to raise your electronic hand or place a request in chat. We will make every effort to recognize those attending on Zoom. But please don't assume that everyone can hear you from where you sit, or that everyone knows who you are. Here you will also find that the limitation for debating any motion is 30 minutes per main motion, with each speaker limited to 3 minutes per speech, although this must be approved by 2/3 of those voting on the 20th. I would encourage you that if, as you read the packet, you see an item you think you'll feel called to speak to, you write out your remarks so you can stay focused and use your time wisely. On page 7, you will find information on motion basics as we follow Robert's Rules of Order's parliamentary procedure. In the written report of the General Presbyter on pages 8 through 10, Ed Thompson highlights some of his work activities as well as lifting up challenges we as a presbytery are facing in the future. The last part of Ed's report details the work he's been doing from February through April of this year. We will then move to the reports of the leadership team and committees. In these reports, you'll find recommendations we'll be voting on at this meeting, as well as information on the ongoing work of the committee. Because recommendations come from a committee, they do not require a second. The leadership team report can be found on pages 11 through 13. It highlights their work in seeking a consultant to assist us in discerning what God is calling us to do and be in the future, provides dates for presbytery meetings in 2024 so that you can go ahead and mark your calendars now, and the approval of hiring a consulting group for a viability study of Bluestone Camp and Conference Center at the request of the Bluestone Working Group. The report of the New Life Congregational Grant Committee, which is under the oversight of the leadership team, can be found on page 13. There you will find churches who have been awarded grants, those who have submitted final reports, and those who need to submit final reports. For more information about the New Life Congregational Grants, you can find it at www.wvpresbytery.org. The Vocations Committee report can be found on pages 14 through 28. They are recommending that the Presbytery examine Marietta Macy for ordination as a minister of Word and Sacrament. She has received a call to be the associate pastor at First Presbyterian Church, Charleston. You will find her autobiographical statement and statement of faith on pages 16 and 17. As part of her examination, Todd Wright, committee chair, will be asking her questions based on her examination by the committee earlier this month in the areas of polity, worship and sacraments, theology, Christian faith, and the Bible. Following those questions, commissioners will have the opportunity to ask her additional questions in those areas. Upon completion of questions, a motion to sustain the examination will be in order, at which time Marietta will be excused as the presbytery votes. The Committee on Ministry chair will then share the approval of match and examination for presbytery membership and highlight the terms of call, which can be found on page 34. In the information section of the Vocations Committee, you'll find several other pieces of information. They include updates on inquirers and candidates, revisions to the Rachel McClintock documents. Due to the generosity of Rachel McClintock, the Vocations Committee is able to offer loans to inquirers and candidates on behalf of the presbytery. Recently, the committee's made some updates to the loan guidelines and the repayment process for these loans. You will find a copy of the guidelines for loans, the loan application, and the repayment process for recipients on pages 18 to 28. You will also note here that Presby Prep, the first year of the Authorized Lay Preacher Commission Pastor Preparation Program, will begin again in January 2024 if there is sufficient interest, indicated by a minimum of 8 people. Finally, August 4th and 5th, there will be a retreat for commissioned pastors and authorized lay preachers at Jackson's Mill. More information will be sent to those folks in early June. The oral report of the Committee on Ministry will be the recognition of Peter Vile's retirement. Peter's the pastor of Davis Memorial Presbyterian Church in Elkins. The written report of the Committee on Ministry can be found on pages 29 to 34. It includes information on commissioned pastor and stated supply covenants, including terms of call, receipt of installed pastor compensation reports with no terms of call included, the small church conference, Ministry in the Wilderness, to be held on Saturday, October 1st at Elk Hills Presbyterian Church in Charleston, completed and assigned exit interviews as pastors move or retire, moderators for churches without pastors, and a liaison for a church in transition. 6-month interviews that have been held with pastoral leaders recently. Guidelines for compensation of moderators for sessions where they are not the installed pastor or in a covenant relationship. Approval of retirement for several ministers of Word and Sacrament. Approval of the match between the Reverend Julie Olt and Old Stone Presbyterian Church in Lewisburg. The terms of call and examination for membership in the Presbytery, and approval of Marietta Macy for membership in the Presbytery and her terms of call. The Committee on Ministry report will be followed by a time of good news from the pews. This is a time for ruling elder commissioners to this meeting to share one way in which their congregation is engaged in ministry and mission, in the hopes that other churches might glean ideas to take back to their session and congregations. If you are your session's ruling elder commissioner for this meeting and would like to share, please be prepared to do so. And again, remember to direct your remarks to the moderator using the microphone. Please note that this is not a time to advertise upcoming events. The Stewardship Committee report, which provides information about a review of financial records in the time of transition from one financial administrator to another earlier this year, can be found on page 35. On pages 36 to 42, you will find financial information for the Presbytery for the first quarter of 2023. Chris Alfred, our financial administrator treasurer, will be reviewing this material with us during the meeting. Pages 43 and 45 provide information on 2023 benevolence pledges and per capita assessments by church. Pages 46 to 49 show this information for both 2023 and 2022. Page 49 provides a list of the top 10 churches in total amount of benevolences pledged and in giving per member for 2023. Pages 50 to 53 contain financial information on Bluestone Camp and Retreat and Friends of Bluestone, which is a separate 501c3 corporation to support the work and ministry of Bluestone. As part of the Bluestone Committee report, Sarah Specht, Program Director, will give an update on plans for summer camp. In addition, you will find the committee's written report on page 54. Following the Bluestone Committee report, Andy Rice, chair of the Transitional General Presbyter Search Committee, will give an update on that committee's work. The Administration Committee will be bringing a recommendation to dissolve the call between Ed Thompson, our General Presbyter, and the Presbytery, effective August 1st as Ed retires. You will find their written report on page 55. The Nurture Committee report can be found on pages 56 and 57. Here you will find a report on the Resource Center open house with the reminder that while we no longer have a Resource Center director, The Resource Center is still in existence and housed at Bream Memorial Presbyterian Church in Charleston and staffed by volunteer Resource Center librarians. Other items for information concern nurturing faith ideas for 2024, updated Reiner loan policies and procedures. These are loans offered for secondary education assistance. And expanding your ministry toolbox course on embracing God's future without forgetting the past on Saturday, October 28th on Zoom. And the Fall Youth Retreat, November 10th through 12 at Bluestone Camp and Retreat for those in grades 6 through 12 and their adult advisors. The Committee on Representation will likely be reporting next, though they do not have a written report in the packet. This is the committee that brings nominations for Presbytery committee members and other opportunities to serve at the Presbytery Synod and General Assembly levels of the Church. They hope to present nominations for members on the Committee on Ministry. On page 58, you'll find the report of the trustees and the recommendation for Enslow Park to be allowed to sell a piece of property and the rationale behind doing so. The recommendation will have been taken up as part of the consent agenda. Several committees have only written reports. These include the following committees: Mission on page 59 with their recommendation on the consent agenda regarding the offering for worship. Relations on page 60 and 61 where it lists the churches members of the committees have been in contact with, and a reminder of the cluster grants for churches doing cooperative ministries or missions. The report of the Administrative Commission to dissolve Ruffner Memorial Presbyterian Church on page 62, which continues its work. On page 63, you'll find an evaluation form for this meeting. This form will also be emailed to you following the meeting. Please take the time to complete and return it. The leadership team reviews these as it plans for future meetings of the Presbytery and takes them seriously. After the evaluation form is the worship bulletin. After the bulletin is the section entitled Flyers. These contain information on upcoming events and are meant to be shared with those on your session and in your congregation. Flyers in this packet include 3 from Bluestone Camp and Retreat. These highlight dates for 2023 Summer Church Camp, opportunities for volunteers to be part of summer camp and touch the lives of our children and youth, and opportunities to be part of summer staff. The final flyer highlights the small church conference on October 1st at Elk Hills Presbyterian Church, as you are encouraged to save the date. If there's no new business given to the stated clerk before the lunch break, we will then move to adjourn, and the moderator will send us out with a benediction. However, while the benediction ends the meeting, the work of ministers and ruling elder commissioners continues as you share the work the Presbytery has done at this meeting with your session and congregation. And please don't forget to share the flyers with those who might be interested. I regret that I will not be present in Clarksburg and able to see you, but I hope you have an enjoyable day. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to contact me at Susan_Sharp_Campbell@hotmail.com.